It's so easy to be average. It takes a little something to be special, doesn't it? It takes a little something special to be a great player. Did you push yourself to be great today?
There wasn't a first down. Not that much. The officiating, I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today. That spot, the graphic displays the unfair penalties. The one not called on us on that period clearly was being poked before the ball got there. And the previous penalty they called on Delano Hill, the ball's uncatchable and by the receiver. See, I'm bitterly disappointed. At least throw a hat, when you skate, when you're silent, that's a penalty.
This is the Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network, your authority on all things Ohio State. Here are your hosts, Shannon Sommers and Chip Minnich.
Not Chip, if you have an iota of human feeling.
Hey there, Buckeye Nation. Welcome to another edition of the Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. I'm your host, Shannon Sommers. Today we're going to be discussing the Illinois Fighting Illini. It's off season, so we're going to take a different approach, which means we're going to be talking college football. So I have Chip with me. Chip, how are we doing today?
Doing well, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
And to discuss the Fighting Illini with us, we had him on for our Illinois preview. And even though Ohio State's not playing the Fighting Illini this year, I'd like to welcome back Robert on Twitter as @Illiniboard.com. Robert, how are we doing today?
I am good, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on.
All right, let's start off with, I guess this is something new that we're going to do this year for the offseason, and we're going to look at the Illinois Fighting Illini. And unfortunately, they were 2-10 last year. They started off with a 2-0 record, but then a lot of the mistakes from the young team and everything came into play. And they finished 0-9 in the conference and 2-10 in overall. Seen a lot of people for some ungodly reason saying that Lovie Smith is on a hot seat this year, and I think that if he were to be, it'd be a huge mistake. And I really don't think that's what. Let's see here, the athletic director Josh, when was it Whitman?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't honestly believe that he's on a hot seat. So, I mean, do you believe that?
No, I don't think he's anywhere near the hot seat. To rebuild a program like Illinois takes a long time. To rebuild from where the program was after Tim Beckman got fired. They hired an interim coach, didn't have an AD because the AD got fired from the same scandal as Beckman. So they extended Bill Cubitt for another year as the interim. So, 11 recruits decommitted that winter. You have an interim coach going on his second year. So when Lovie Smith took over in March of 2016, the program was as low as the Power 5 program has been this decade. Players departed. There was the whole scandal with player abuse. It swept up the whole athletic department. So, Whitman was hired. His first move was to hire Lovie. And I would be stunned if he even thought about moving toward the button in 5 full years, because he has basically given him the instructions that the whole thing has to be built from the ground up. And so this is 2 years into what's at least 5 and probably a full 6 years to get it back.
Now, the athletic director is a former player for the Illini, which helps out a lot and with understanding what needs to be happening for the program and everything. And I believe that they announced that they were going to be doing some construction on the south end of the horseshoe there to be, with the football facilities, but I guess that's getting postponed. But they're going to be building this brand new facility like right next door, basically. So, I mean, that's going to be a good move in the future for recruits and everything. but also I believe Lovie Smith hired a new coach, and it's going to help with like the St. Louis area recruits and stuff, possibly. Where if Ohio State fans remember, that's where some kid named Zeke's from.
Right, exactly. I'll cover both of what you said because both are important. Yes, they're building a new practice facility. Basically, they have an indoor practice facility, but this is more like the performance center, as they're calling it. They did a study for it under Mike Thomas, the old athletic director, and that study said put it under the south end zone. If you're going to redo the south end zone anyway, go ahead and redo it with, the new coach's office, new team meeting rooms, new locker rooms, new weight room, new, team dining facilities, all that stuff. That's what the original study did. Whitman came in, was hired as athletic director, and said, let's decouple these two projects. We'll build the performance center right attached to the indoor practice facility, and then in the future redo the stands with maybe something different underneath it. So that's what they started construction on. The big hole right now. Actually, the framework is going up. It's supposed to be done in time for the 2019 season. So it's about, I'd say, 15 months away from construction completion. The second thing is, yes, Lovie did go out and hire a high school head coach. Every team took a different approach to hiring this 10th assistant that was allowed in January. And Lovie's angle was to hire a coach who had delivered him a pretty big recruit. Larry Boyd is an offensive tackle, came in and started as a true freshman last year, came from that high school. And that high school has 10 more Division I, probably maybe even 10 Power 5 players, 6 seniors and 4 juniors who have multiple offers from Power 5 teams. And so that's the angle Lovie has gone, is say, okay, we have to get an influx of talent. I don't have to tell you guys that 5 stars don't come along very often to Champaign, but he's already got the quarterback from that high school who's a 5-star who had offers from, you guys, Alabama, Miami, Texas A&M, USC, across the board, and he's verbal to Illinois. So it's a move that has already paid off and is the angle they're taking to rebuild.
Now, before I hand this over to Chip, I'm sure he's got quite a bit of questions. I actually had the question. I totally forgot what it was. Oh, I read your basically your State of the Union, if you will, from over there on the Illini board, and I love the saying that this is like the season of the Swan or whatever it was. But are Illinois fans willing to have the patience in order for this fruition to come together, and maybe that Lovie Smith could possibly build like maybe the base for something to where, like, say, a Wisconsin is, as far as they don't get the top recruits or anything like that, but they're able to have, plug the right players in for the right system in order to be successful?
I think fans wanted to see more than 5 wins the first 2 years. He went 3-9 and then 2-10. I think this offseason, partly, getting a 5-star on board, and plus a 4-star, like a top 100 kid out of Texas who is already verbal. So there are 2 recruits that are, way beyond anybody we usually land. But I think people saw last year that how this rebuild is going to go. So the 2007 Illinois team, I've done so much research on this. I believe it to be the youngest major conference, youngest Power 5 team this decade. I cannot find any other team. So Illinois started 17 true freshmen, not redshirt freshmen last year, true freshmen starting a game. 17 of them started. They played 23 of the 25 guys in the recruiting class. After the season, 15 upperclassmen transferred, basically saying, there's a true freshman starting over me already. I have no future here. Like, he's playing his guys already. Because remember, Lovie didn't get a first recruiting class. He arrived in March, took over the program. That spring, Illinois had to had to postpone spring practice. They put it off by a month because he had to, move into his office and hire a coaching staff. So they did it really condensed and really late. Then that first recruiting class was already on board. They had signed in February under Bill Cubit. And so, all of that to say that entering the third year now, Illinois this is a statistic that I want to scream far and wide. Illinois is now down to 13 inherited players going into the third year. So if you think about that, I went back and researched it for the other Illinois classes. In Tim Beckman's third year, he still had 37 inherited players from Ron Zook. Ron Zook had, I believe, 39 inherited players he was using in the third year. Take the guys, the juniors, the seniors, who've now been in your program for 3 years, and those are your guys. For Lovey, it's down to 13 guys. And maybe 4 of them start this fall, maybe 5. But it is a complete and total turn to, he gets the job in March of 2016. He gets his first recruiting class signed in February of 2017. He placed 22 of those guys last fall, probably going to start 14 or 15 of those guys, of those true sophomores this fall. And he's probably going to use some of his second recruiting class as other starters. So the team will primarily be true sophomores and true freshmen this fall. So this is a complete, I tell people it's like a team, it's like an expansion team. Don't think of it as somebody taking over Gruden taking over the Raiders. Think of it as Tom Coughlin starting out with the Jacksonville Jaguars and a brand new team. They basically just went out and said, okay, it's almost in a death penalty sense, we're starting over. And this first class, these are the guys we're going to play. And the second class, they're all going to play. And if the juniors and seniors that were remaining transfer, then they transfer and we just bring in more. And by the 5th year, we'll have all of our own players. They'll be experienced, and hopefully we're going somewhere.
Yeah, I remember when we talked last year before the Illinois game that you mentioned, I think you were at one of the practices and you noticed that there was a difference in the attitude and everything, that the younger players were hungrier and the upperclassmen was sitting on the sidelines. And all of a sudden, like you said, in the offseason, you seen all these players transfer and they kind of got the picture that, hey, we don't need to be here anymore, that this just isn't for us. But
yes, there was an absolute rift in the locker room. You could sense it. There were 2 sides. It's going to happen when you do something like that. It's not that they were loyal to their former coach, because they know their former coach got fired for a player abuse scandal. So nobody was saying, hey, we should still have Tim Beckman here. But, there was you interview players after the game, you sit down and talk to them. Some of the seniors would tell me in interviews, like it's time to go. And there's a definite dividing line on the team and everything else. So yeah, it got kind of ugly there for a while.
Have you ever watched that All or Nothing about the Michigan football team on Amazon this year yet?
I haven't. I want to, but I have not seen it, no.
All right, well, when you watch that, your skin's probably going to boil, because all you're going to hear is that they were the youngest team in the country last year. So right. I just want to, because they want to point out that 8-5 record is because they were so young.
Yes, I can statistically beat total starts for players on the field by the 6th game. Total starts in their careers was down to something like, what was the number, 46 or something like that. We had a game against somebody who was really experienced. I can't remember what it was. And they had 321 total starts among their 22 starters throughout their careers. And Illinois was at 46. I am loaded with statistics of what I believe to be, the youngest team in football in the last 10 years.
Yeah. I've been trying to tell Michigan fans that, and they tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, but hey, they want to keep their heads in the sand, while the year before Ohio State was the youngest and they got to the playoffs. So, hey, whatever they got to try to hold their head on, I guess. But
Sure.
I'll go ahead and hand over some time here, because I don't want to take up all your time, to Chip.
So my questions, I'm looking at the schedule, and the first question I had was in relation to Illinois opening up with Kent State, and then they play Western Illinois. And maybe you have a different opinion, but do you believe that the crucial game of the non-conference schedule is that third game against USF.
Definitely. Totally think that's the one people are focused on. Penn State has a new coach, and they were bad last year and should be bad, in the first game under the new guy. West Illinois has a new coach. They actually made the FCS playoffs last year, and their guy got hired away, so they're starting a new coaching staff. Plus, it's an FCS school. So yeah, third game actually will be in Chicago. Occasionally, Illinois will play a game at Soldier Field. So this will kind of be a neutral site game, or a home away from home kind of thing. So yeah, it's big. Illinois went down to South Florida last year, play that 10-2 South Florida team with Flowers, the quarterback, who just ate us alive. And so they lost a lot. I think they lost 13, 14 starters off that team, including Flowers. And so that's going to be a big, okay, yes, Illinois is young once again, but South Florida is pretty young as well, and kind of starting over with a new roster under Strong. So, yeah, that's the, as of today, I don't expect Illinois to win that. I still think Illinois is way too young, but that would be a big moment to maybe start the season 3-0 and say, okay, maybe this team is starting to take steps.
That leads me into the next game that's on the schedule, and that is a Friday night game against Penn State on September 21st. And I guess my question is, being in Ohio, high school football Friday nights are pretty sacred. And I just was curious as to kind of what the general thought and temperature is of the Illinois fans playing games on Friday nights.
There has been a fair bit of kickback from obviously the high school crowd. The coaches don't like it. There's that type of thing. I think there's a reason those Friday night games that Jim Delaney wants to have, I think there's a reason they're going to the Illinois of the world. Not to insult us too much, but personally, I like it. We played Nebraska on Friday night last year, and it was a nationally televised game. We actually played South Florida on ESPN on the mothership last year. You guys don't understand this, but when every one of our games is on the alternate BTN channels, to be actually on ESPN, to have Illinois football shown, on the TV at some bar in Chattanooga, Tennessee on a Friday night is kind of a big deal. So for us to get exposure and for us to have that, I don't mind it one bit. It gets us on the main broadcast kind of thing. Gets us a night game, which we don't get very much. It just doesn't happen for Illinois because obviously, the networks aren't going to choose Illinois Purdue as their Saturday night game. So I like it. Yes, high school coaches are kicking back, but Illinois has got to do something to, build some momentum and to gain some recognition and to show off for recruits, or, hey, did you catch us on ESPN the other night kind of thing? And, it works for us.
The last question I had is, can you give us, I know Illinois is a very young team, and I'm sure, in terms of with the recruits, it's, we're recording this in May, and, perhaps the best recruits have not yet arrived on campus. But I was wondering if you could give us the name of one or two recruits that you believe can come in and have a positive impact as true freshmen.
Well, the best player in the class is a kid named Calvin Avery. He was a 4-star from Texas. Illinois has a wide receiver coach named Andrew Hayes Stoker. And Coach Stoker from Texas and has ties down there, especially with Bishop Dunn High School in the Dallas area. And so he landed Avery and an offensive tackle named Myers from Bishop Dunn last year. And the other top 100 kid, the kid ranked something like 56 nationally, who was already verbal to Illinois in this class, Marquez Beeson, is also from Bishop Dunn. So that relationship has paid off. Avery will be a freshman this fall. He had, being a top 200 kid, he had LSU and Florida State and, a whole bunch of big time offers, but decided to play at Illinois. So I think he'll come in, push for playing time right away. I try to explain this to fans of fan bases before. Like, I'm a guy who goes to practice, and I'll go to training camp any practices they have open. And when a kid like an Avery, and again, I'm projecting because I haven't seen him yet in person, but just say in 2009 when Corey Legit came in, he changed the pronunciation of his name. He was Corey Legit when he was at Illinois. Now with the Chargers, he's Corey Legit. Anyway, when he came in, watching the first practice, and he's just a different skill level. Like, he's the kid that Ohio State usually gets. He's the kid that usually goes to Penn State, whatever, So when those kids do pick Illinois, it's so night and day different when you watch just their explosion off the line, their physical ability is just well beyond the level of kid we usually get. So I think he's going to play early and play a lot. And then honestly, quarterback is completely wide open. So both returning quarterbacks from last year, including Jeff George Jr., whose dad was our best quarterback, in the 80s or early 90s, went on to be the number one overall pick in the 1990 NFL draft. Jeff George Jr. transferred after the season because he's a pocket quarterback, and we're totally going to be running with the quarterback out of the offense. So, and then the other quarterback who had shoulder problems throughout his career, Chase Crouch, who's from Ohio, he retired from football after the season, still had a year left on his of eligibility. So it's going to be true sophomore Cam Thomas, or it's going to be one of 3 true freshman quarterbacks they added in this class. So there's an opportunity there for one of those 3 guys to really take it and run. We also added a 5th-year transfer from Virginia Tech, a kid who, AJ Bush, who started at Nebraska, didn't win the job there, transferred to Virginia Tech, didn't win the job there, and his 5th year transferring to Illinois. But again, it's a blank slate at quarterback, new offensive coordinator, Rod Smith, who was Rich Rod's guy at Arizona, and, plenty opportunity for one of these quarterbacks to say, hey, young team, I can be your guy.
Yeah, to piggyback off of, the hiring of Rod Smith, I mean, you looked at Illinois last year, they were 15.4 points per game. I believe their total offense they averaged like maybe 280 yards a game, which is like next to last, like 106 yards of rushing. I mean, what you have, let me see here, look down, but Nick Allegretti? I believe
Yes.
He was honorable mention for the Big Ten for an offensive player, and he's one of the guards. Ohio State, Urban Meyer's always said, you win and lose the games in the trenches. I mean, how is the offensive line for Illinois going to be?
I think it'll be improved. It was probably, I went up to the spring scrimmage. It was probably the most improved unit on the team. Again, just like everywhere else on the field, they started over last year. So they started Allegretti, who's a redshirt junior, but then they started a redshirt freshman who had never played at center, and then 3 true freshmen at both tackle spots and at guard. So again, it's hard to explain to people, like, okay, Allegretti's played in 12, 15 games coming into this year, but none of these other guys have ever stepped on a college football field. So, when you run out of offensive line of 4 freshmen, it's going to look like high schoolers trying to play against college kids. It's just how it works. But, the idea is throw them into the fire, get them ready. It's better than playing the guys you inherited and then training these guys. Let them learn while they're on the field. So this year it'll be 4 sophomores and a senior. So it should be a step forward. All the shock that they went through last year should be settled down a bit. And then, of course, the plan is, 2019, they're even better. And 2020, now you've got 4 offensive linemen who have all started 35 games. So, that's kind of how one of these rebuilds work, especially when the coach gets hired, in March of a year, that he gets his first class, throws those guys in there immediately. He knows it's going to be ugly, but the idea is that it pays off in the future. So, and I want to make that point. Like, it's totally different than what, say, Jeff Brom did at Purdue. Like, it's a completely different thing. Brom bought in 5 JUCOs and 7 fifth-year transfers. You know, he played only 3 true freshmen last year. He played all the guys he inherited from Darrell Hazel and said, okay, you know, we have enough talent to win 6 games here, and they did. You know, what Lovey has done is said, I don't have any talent. I don't want to just do patchwork and find 5th-year guys who transfer away. I want to just find some transfers or JUCO. You know, Tim Beckman had built Illinois with, you know, at least got to a bowl game in his 3rd year with 22 JUCOs over 3 classes. So, you know, there was this, you know, there's different ways to build it. And what Lovey has done is say, okay, yes, it's crazy to throw 3 true freshman offensive linemen out there against Ohio State, but that's what I'm going to do because we're looking toward the future and we're trying to rebuild this thing. So, you know, that's the answer across the board for everything Lovey has done.
See, I believe on offense and defense, Illinois is returning 7 players on each side of the ball. On the defensive side, the main staple, I believe, is the strong linebacker Phillips. What do you think as far as their the defense? I mean, how much of an improvement do you think they can make from last year going into this year with having all the trials and tribulations of last year that they had?
Yeah, I think the defense was a little better than people realized last year, mostly because when you have an offense that goes 3 and out as much as this offense went 3 and out, it's such a task for any defense to, you know, go out there for 38 minutes and try and stop a team, or to, you know, be tired by the end of the first quarter because the offense has gone 3 and out, 1 first down, 3 and out, and you're just sending the defense back out there. So I look at a team like last year, and if there was just any kind of offense, or at least that could hang on to the ball a little, keep the defense fresh, I think their statistics would have been a lot better. So I think there's going to be a step forward for the defense this year. Like you mentioned, Delshon Phillips, he was a JUCO in Lovey's first class. So he'll be, well, he might be, sounds crazy, he's probably the only senior starter. Again, Lovey has gone all with his guys. And so obviously JUCO, who came in the last year, is going to be a senior this year. So, you know, he's going to have to be a leader. There was a linebacker that Lovey really likes, who will be a redshirt sophomore named Jake Hansen. He tore his ACL at training camp last summer, so he missed the whole season. So I think he'll be, you know, one of the guys. You know, the other starters at linebacker have transferred out. You know, the Trey Watson transferred to Maryland. Like, again, Lovey's just turning to the younger guys at kind of every corner, and they're doing that. So be a young defense, probably might go sophomore, freshman, junior on the defensive line, and it's probably going to go sophomore, freshman maybe in the defensive backfield. So it's, again, going to be crazy young, but the plan is to, you know, baptism by fire and then see where they're at.
Might the secondary for Illinois be kind of a shock to people as far as being better than what they think, when you had Stanley Green, who's a free safety? He was an honorable mention for the Big Ten Awards. And then you have Bennett Williams in the strong safety that he's kind of highly touted that I see a lot of people are talking about. I mean, just as far as the safeties are better than average. And I mean, I'm not sure about the cornerbacks though.
Yeah. Safeties are probably strength of defense. Green and Williams. I think Bennett Williams is going to be one of the best safeties at Illinois. He wasn't that. He was like, if you rank the whole 2017 recruiting class, he was like second to last as far as, you know, star rating or ranking level. We were his only Power 5 offer, but yeah, he was great. The freshman All-American on several lists, and made some just eye-popping plays that you don't normally see in Champaign. So I think he's going to be good. Stanley Green can be great. Just has to maybe stay on the field and not go helmet to helmet. I think he got tossed from 3 games. One was a kind of a weak call where the ball carrier kind of dipped their head at the last second and got called for a helmet to helmet. Purdue fans hate him because he delivered a blow to David Blau's chest, and that was the end of the season for him. So his big thing is proper tackling, I'll say, so he can stay on the field, because he forced 4 fumbles last year, maybe 5 fumbles last year, something like that. He's that maybe old school safety that delivers pop after pop and can force the ball out. He'll put his helmet right on the ball on a ball carrier and force the fumble. So that could be the strength. And then corner is young. Probably 2 true sophomores, Nate Hobbs and Tony Adams. I think both are really talented, but again, true sophomore, so a lot of growing up to do.
Right. Chip mentioned the non-conference games with Kent State, Western Illinois, and USF. I can speak here today. But to kick off the Big Ten right after the USF game, you've got Penn State, who comes in with Trace McSorley. Then you have to go out to Rutgers for your, part of your crossover games. And then you have the last crossover game is at Maryland, like the end of October. So I believe I've seen that the over and under for Illinois is probably like 3.5. What are your thoughts on? Are you going to go over or under on that?
I think that's accurate. I thought it would be about 3.5. I think most fans want to see them double the win total. It's a 2-10 year. You need to follow it with a 4-8. It's funny, we started by talking about Corey Patterson, the high school coach we hired, and all of his players at Trinity Catholic in St. Louis, and some of those players have made quotes in the media saying, we kind of need to see it. I'm not going to commit until signing day, and I need to see that Illinois is advancing. So it puts pressure on, got to show something if you want to hang on to these recruits or add some other players from the high school. So it'll be interesting. I think 3.5 is probably accurate. I can find 4 wins. There's a couple games in the Big Ten. I think we match up pretty good with Maryland. I feel good about the Minnesota game at home. I think our defense is built to stop that kind of offense, and maybe even Nebraska is a bit of a mess in the first year for Scott Frost, and as they try and find a quarterback and that type of thing. Maybe there's a lucky win there where you're outgained by 200 yards, but you force 4 turnovers and win the game, kind of thing. So right now I'm thinking it's probably a 4-win team, but if you could, if Illinois could get something somewhere, a breakout season from a tailback or a wide receiver, and get maybe to 5 wins, it could really help the recruiting and help selling that 2019 and 2020 are going to be big steps forward.
Well, all I want to say is you better slow your roll on Nebraska, just because, according to her athletic director, Michigan and Ohio State are running scared of them. So I don't think, Illinois is going to be this big, huge match.
Yes, I will cower in fear at all of that. We really should have beat them last year. Nebraska was bad, just like we were bad. And we had that Friday night game. That would have been a nice one to just steal and, seal Riley's fate. But, that took care of itself.
Yeah, I think if they get if they go out to, say, Rutgers and they knock off Rutgers for their first Big Ten win, I think that can be a huge change for this program. And you might see a lot of momentum going forward, especially with Purdue, right? Coming back and facing Purdue after that. So I think that, there's a good chance that they could finish at over the 3.5. But then, I'm kind of hopeful as a Big Ten fan to be able to see Illinois get a bowl game. Maybe not this year, but, I've noticed in a lot of the stuff that you've been writing, the big thing you keep pointing to is 2020. That's going to be pretty much where this foundation is going to be solidified, where you're going to have all the experience and everybody's going to be, on the same page and everything. And I'm kind of hopeful that's going to be, taking place for them, especially with having a new facility and everything like that.
Yeah, I think I wrote last year in my season preview that my hope was something like 3-5-7-9. Like going into the second year, you knew that the team was starting over. I thought it would be a 3-9 team. They ended up going 2-10. But I saw the path as 3 wins in 2017, 5 wins in 2018, 7 wins in 2019, 9 wins in 2020. That, you follow that path each season for those 4 years. You should be getting better because you're returning, each year you're returning more and more people. So that was the hope. They won 2 games, so maybe it's going to be something like 2-4-6-8. But that's kind of the plan, is that you're playing all these kids in hopes of having a kickstart kind of season in 2019 or 2020, where you're I laid out this kind of crazy statistic. Now, obviously players are going to transfer, but last year there were 8 total seniors on the team. This year there are 9 total seniors on the entire team. Next year, there's a lot of redshirt juniors that are just going to graduate and move on without a 5th year. So there'll probably be maybe 12 total seniors. And then in 2020, as of right now, there would be 32 seniors on the team. So you're talking 8 seniors, 9 seniors, 12 seniors, 32. So that's why I'm pointing to 2020 as, okay, when a program like this is rebuilt, when David Cutcliffe rebuilt Duke, it wasn't until that 4th or 5th year. For Cutcliffe, it was the 5th year that you finally get the thing moving. So we're 2 years in, and I think most fans are hunkered down to endure, maybe another year of this, and then 2019 a step forward, and 2020 a big step forward.
Now, looking at some of the stats, and I don't know how accurate a lot of this is. I'm getting this off of NJ.com, and it has the money, basically, like total revenue, student fees, institutional support, the Big Ten distribution, contributors, and ticket sales. And I believe it looks like Illinois for 2017 was at $93.9 million for the revenue and $100.7 million for their expenses, having a deficit of $6.8 million. How much do they need to get successful for the football in order to increase their ticket sales? I'm guessing that's where they're going to get most of their money and contributions in order to get out of this quote unquote deficit, even though they're getting money from contributors and everything for building a new facility.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Ticket sales have plummeted. I remember 2008. So Illinois went to the Rose Bowl in 2007, thanks to you guys going to the national title game. The second place Big Ten team got the chance to go to the Rose Bowl, and so we went to the Rose Bowl in 2007. 2008, season ticket sales pushed probably over. I think season tickets themselves were over 40,000, and average attendance was 60 something. I think by now Illinois is down. Like last year's average attendance was 39,000, and season tickets were well below that. So, it's at one of its lowest points probably since the 1970s. So yes, that's the whole Whitman plan, which is invest in a coach, buy it for 6 years, tell him you have not an ounce of heat on your back. If you need to clear the whole roster and start over, I've got your back. Build a winner in the future and build something that's sustainable. And, if the choice is between a transfer kid or a JUCO kid and a freshman, go with the freshman, because this is a long-term rebuild, and we need to show steady progress and start getting people back in the stands. So, you've seen it. Illinois, pretty big state. It's one of the biggest states in the Big Ten footprint. There's 12, 13 million people in the state ready to support a winner again. As soon as Mike White started winning in the 1980s, Illinois started, a string of year after year after year of sellouts. So if the program is there, the state will respond. It's just been so low for the last 25 years that attendance keeps drifting away. Now, I need to note that what was it, first home game of Lovey's career. It was home against Trubisky in North Carolina in September of 2016. And, the year before, attendance had fallen into the 30,000 range. Well, suddenly we have a sellout, over 60,000 and a sellout for that North Carolina game. People were excited, new coach, let's see where it goes. That's not something Northwestern can do. They don't have like flip a switch and suddenly 60,000 people show up. That's probably not even something Purdue can do. They boosted their attendance last year, but they didn't have anything like that. So you get a winner in Champaign, and because it's 2 hours from Chicago and there's so many alumni and it's such a big state, you can get attendance back immediately. You could dwarf what Iowa can do, or even what a Wisconsin can do, if you built that kind of program in Champaign. So now it's just about, building that program and getting those wins and selling those tickets.
I know basketball plays a big part of it too, as far as ticket sales, and they're in a rebuilding mode and everything. And you guys could just hold off on that until, Ohio State gets theirs up and running. So
you got it. No problem. We've apparently made that deal with everybody this decade. So no problem.
Chip, you have anything else here?
Yeah, if anything, listening to the plan, it sounds like that November 2020 game when Ohio State comes to visit, that should be a rocking good time if everything falls into place as Levy Smith is trying to build.
You are absolutely correct. And being Ohio State guys, you'll probably enjoy this. With the day Lovey was hired, or maybe the week after Lovey was hired, this is in March of 2016. I put the date October 12th, 2019 in my Twitter bio, and it has stayed there for the last 2 years, and it will be there until that day. I looked at where the program was, and I looked at the rosters, and I said, this team really isn't going to, people are excited now, but it's going to be a long road. And the moment it starts to turn the corner is the Michigan game in 2019. We haven't played Michigan since 2014, when did we play last? 2013, maybe? So, it's been a long time. Michigan in the 80s and 90s was hated in Champaign. Obviously not how they're hated in Columbus, but, there were some close call games that went the wrong way, and, some bad quotes from some players that turned it into everybody hating Michigan. So I just picked that game, and I said, okay, it's going to be a while. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some recruiting and everything else. But October 12th, 2019, that's the moment that we start to step forward and say, hello, we're a program and we're to be dealt with. So still holding that. I'm clinging to that. I know we've got one more year of building, and then hopefully by that time we're rolling. And then the plan would be, like you mentioned, 2019 going to 2020, you still have almost everybody coming back, and maybe you can, make that November game a fun time.
And what's not to hate about a football program that everybody in America just seems to enjoy beating so much, like Michigan?
Yes. Well, see, I'll do other podcasts. I have to be nice what I say about everybody, right? So,
Well, I always pick on Michigan. Yeah, I always pick on Michigan, and really I like to have a good time with it. And a lot of their fans, you can, come across some of their fans are just heads in the sand, and no matter what facts you give them, they still won't believe it. But a lot of them are actually kind of smart, and you can communicate with them and actually debate with them. And those are actually the fun ones. And that's what makes college football so great. And especially just with all the traditions and everything that each school has, which brings me to remembering, I believe Illinois this past season, they canceled the war chant, right?
Yes. So the chief went away in 2007, and this last year was the first time they got rid of the war chant.
Now, I was seeing something about they're trying to possibly get rid of the name, the Fighting Illini. I know, I'm in Cleveland, Chip's in Cleveland area too, and I'm a huge Cleveland Indians fan. Getting rid of Chief Wahoo, I can kind of understand some of it, and some of it I don't get, but that's just, being a fan. But all of this that's going on, I mean, do you think as far as possibly having to get a name change will be necessary?
I don't believe so. I'll give you a quick history lesson. I know I can get long-winded, but this is the quick history lesson. So, the name Illinois was the French word for the tribe in the area at the time, which was the Illini. It was a member of the Peoria tribe. So that's why the state was named Illinois. So when the university started, there was an editorial in 1870 something that came up with the name for the student body or for people from Illinois, and the name was Illini, not Fighting Illini, just Illini, Illini. They took it from Illinois. It only had one L in it, but they just, and it had an E, but they just kind of, there's this editorial in the student paper that we're going to name the student paper the Daily Illini. We're going to call ourselves Illini. The name started not really in reference to any Native American imagery. Illini was somewhere like Sooner for Oklahoma people or Hoosier for people from Indiana. It was just a name to describe the people and the student body. So that existed for 50 years as the Daily Illini, and people calling it, Illini are, people from this area. 1920s come around, college athletics build. Everybody's picking a mascot. Illini is the obvious one for Illinois, so they attached the Native American imagery. They came up with a chief, Chief Illini. They came up with the war chant. They added all these things. And so that existed for 70 years of, Illinois was known as the Fighting Illini. They got rid of the chief in 2007, and they've gotten rid of the war chant. So any Native American imagery attached to it is gone. I believe Fighting Illini will carry on because really it's no different than Sooner or Hoosier. It was the word, and it was like that for 50 years, that just described people in the area. It was a term for that kind of thing. So 50 years, it exists like that. 70, 80 years, it exists with the Native American imagery attached. The fighting was actually added as part of World War I that they called soldiers from Illinois Fighting Illini. And so that's kind of where the term began. And so I think it just goes back to that they will keep the name. They will say Illini means the same thing. You think of Sooner, you think of Oklahoma. You think of Hoosier, you think of Indiana. You think of Illini, you think of Illinois. And so I think it will exist along with, as they take away all the Native American imagery from it, and it just exists as, people on campus. It's the Daily Illini.
Awesome. That's a nice history lesson. The goal is to learn something new every day, and I think we've learned something new here. So
there you go.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Silver Bullets podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. I want to thank Robert from the Illini board. You can find him on Twitter at @ALionsEye, and check out his work because it's a lot of great stuff. And also, you could, Chip, you want to let people know where they can find you at?
Yeah, I can be found on Twitter at Chip Minnich, last name spelled Minnich, as well as, like Shannon, I'm a contributor to the ozone.net as well as on Athlon Sports.
You can follow me on Twitter at ShannonCFB. You could like us on Facebook and Twitter, and follow us on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Send us questions with the hashtag AskSilverBullets for other teams that we're going to be having. You have to figure, I think Minnesota might be this next week, so I'll put out a tweet to let you guys know. And don't forget to listen to the other shows on the Ozone Radio Network, like the Buckeye Sloopcast, Acosta Field with Tony Gerdeman and Tom Orr, and Sons of Schmidt when they bring their show out of hiatus. So we want to thank you and say, go Bucks.
Go Bucks.